In this video, I'll go over final picks and Draftkings strategy for UFC 302. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Now, as a disclaimer, at the time of recording this, we haven't seen weigh-ins or anything like that. It's a pay-per-view card. People tend to take it seriously. I expect everybody to make weight. We'll operate under that assumption. And real quick, if you haven't already, go back and watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. That is a different video. Different information's covered. We talk about each one of the fights in greater detail. Some of the things covered in that video is going to be different than what we talk about in this video. We're going to be looking at lineup construction, what you need to do to be successful on this slate, and we will start with the value plays. These are plays at 8,000 and below. Essentially, the underdogs are going to need in your lineup to make everything work salary-wise. Cesar Almeida's got to be the first guy that you talk about when you're talking about value play consideration. He's right up there at 8,000, but he has a chance to score you a decent amount of points. Now, last time out against Dylan Budka, I wasn't overly impressed with the takedown defense. I wasn't overly impressed with the patience, because I think he was able to win very easily because Dylan Budka just gassed and gassed hard. What you might have learned about Cesar Almeida was that he's got the takedown defense of a guy who's been striking for most of his career. It's not a huge surprise. And it's not like Roman Kopylov leans on his wrestling all the time. Should he in this matchup? Probably. Will he? I think there's a decent chance, but there's no guarantee. There's a good chance that these guys are just going to strike for however long this fight lasts. And for as good of an MMA striker as Roman Kopylov is, that does give Cesar Almeida the opportunity. Now, I still like Roman Kopylov to win. I think he's one of the most slept on fighters at 185 pounds today, but you have to have some Cesar Almeida exposure if you're running multiple lineups. He's far from my favorite value play of the week, but he is somebody that you need to have in that pool. An underdog I like a lot more is Phil Rowe at 7,900. Now, Phil Rowe, from a DraftKings perspective, not typically lighting it up. He drops his UFC debut to Gabe Green, follows that up with 3 straight wins, 100 points, 83 points, 78 points. So he's not like he's averaging a whole lot of points in fights that he's winning. But what I do like for him is the knockout upside and also the knockdown upside. You think back to that fight that Jake Matthews had with Matt Semmelsberger, he got dropped a couple of times. He got clipped. He was getting hurt consistently. I can see Phil Rowe dropping him 1, 2, maybe 3 times before he ends the fight. And if that's the case, if he's beating up on him like that, he could score you north of 90 DraftKings points, and that's really what you would need from him down at this price. I don't think there are a ton of live underdogs on this card. The favorites look really good this week. I know people are making cases for some of the bigger underdogs on the card, but I think everything's going to stay pretty tight. So these slight dogs like a Cesar Almeida, even though I think he's favored, or guys like Phil Rowe, are going to be the type of fighters that show up in the optimal lineup this week. Like we talked about in the predictions video from earlier in the week, I'm not all that high on Jake Matthews. I think he's kind of plateaued a bit. I think he looked amazing against Andre Fialho, and then we kind of learned who Andre Fialho is. So I don't know how he could be the favorite here when Phil Rowe's got the 8.5-inch reach advantage, the power edge, the boxing edge, and has been grappling like a madman outside of MMA competition. So give me Phil Rowe this week. He wins and he scores you hopefully north of 90 DraftKings points if you want to put him in your lineups. Definitely a single entry kind of dog. Another underdog that we're looking at is an old Brazilian in Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. He hasn't lit it up just like Phil Rowe. You see a couple of spots where he's scoring a lot of points, but he's not about to land 150 significant strikes on Rude Boy Randy Brown. I'm telling you now. Another thing that you're not going to get from him in this fight is you're not going to get takedowns, and you're probably not going to get a knockdown. And I don't think that Randy Brown's going to be looking for takedowns all that often here, so you're not going to get reversals either. If anything, you're going to get some strikes, you're going to get significant strikes, and you're also going to get control time. So from a scoring perspective, we can look at some of the past performances when he did go the distance and when he was primarily striking and see what it's going to give you. So against Nurmagomedov, 49 points. Obviously, that's not good. I think the loser of the co-main event is going to score better than that. And then you come down here, you've got this decision over Kachenko. And let me know in the comments if you guys remember the Kachenko guy who came into the UFC. I think he was undefeated or something, Russian guy, scary, and then lost a couple fights in the UFC. Never heard of him again. But 72 points in a decision win there. Curtis Millender, Luigi Vanderimi, Sean Strickland. These are finishes where he's posting really good scores. But against Max Griffin, Lyman Good, you've got Nakamura there, 70, 71, 53. So based on his fighting style and the way that the fight probably plays out, best case scenario, Capoeira is going to give you 70-ish DraftKings points. Not somebody who I'm dying to play, but if the card is short on dogs and he's one of the 2 or 3 that rise to the occasion, he's going to be the reason why people win money this week. So I suggest you be overweight to the field and don't expect too much. And I really only have one more underdog, and it's going to be Boashina. It's going to be Paulo Costa down there at 7,400. It's not only that I think he's going to win the fight, but but also if he loses, he can score you a decent amount of points. You see against Marvin Vettori, he scored 73 points in a 5-round decision loss. I think with the way that he fights and the way that Sean Strickland fights, the loser of that fight is going to score a pretty decent amount of points, at least 60 DraftKings points. On the flip side of that, the winner of that fight is going to score over 100 DraftKings points. So if they combine for, say, 170, let's say it's instead of 60 and 100, let's say it goes up to 170 DraftKings points. Well, that's like having two fighters in your lineup that score 85 points apiece. And on a card where a lot of favorites are going to win, that might be the recipe, especially in a contest like single entry. It's not going to win the big contest, I don't think. But from a lineup construction standpoint in your tournaments, I think you could get away with stacking the co-main event this week. And to further make the case for Paulo Costa winning this fight, outside of what we talked about in the predictions video from earlier in the week, if you're on Twitter, you saw me mention this. I'm going to pull Sean Strickland's fight log up just to take a look at the last 3 very close decisions that he's had. So we go to Sean Strickland. We look at that fight with Dricus du Plessis. Some people watching live thought that Sean Strickland won. If you felt like he won, I'm not mad at you. He landed a lot of strikes. He did his thing. He scored 71 points in a decision loss. Against Jared Cannonier, same deal. He scores 68 points in a decision loss. Now, of course, these are high scores for somebody losing these fights, but he's doing it because he has 5 rounds to work. You come down here, you look at this fight against Jack Hermansson, 93 points in a win, but the points aren't important here. What's important is he beat Jack Hermansson each and every round. The correct scorecard for that fight should be 50-45 Strickland. At worst, 49-46 Strickland. So I say all that to say this. Split decision against Jared Cannonier, split decision against Dricus du Plessis. People thought he might have won that fight watching live, and then everybody and their mother knew that he was beating Jack Hermansson every round. That fight still went to split decision. I don't think he has a very judge-friendly style. If he's not blowing the doors off these guys, or if they're not crumbling in front of him, like we saw Israel Adesanya, like a deer in the headlights all night basically, or Abus Magomedov having less than 6 minutes of gas in that main event, or Nasruddin Imavov starting to wither in front of him. If guys don't wither and they just keep fighting him for 5 rounds, he doesn't land with enough power. He doesn't have enough big moments. He sometimes, even though he's throwing a lot, doesn't feel like he's throwing a lot. He's throwing jab and jab and jab and jab and jab and teep to the body, and it's not enough. Not enough for the judges, at least. He doesn't have a judge-friendly style, and you look at that fight that they want to show you over and over again against, what was his name? Jack Marshman, where he's yelling at Jack Marshman, whatever. He was beating the brakes off of Jack Marshman and then started yelling in the last couple of seconds. And it's not even like a Max Holloway situation where he's like, oh, meet me in the middle. He's still jabbing and moving away. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm trying to say is that the judges aren't looking at this guy like he's really dominating fights. They're looking at it as if you just keep his activity level or stay close to his same level of activity, the rounds are going to be close every time. Paulo Costa's got a granite chin. He's got decent cardio. You look at that fight against Marvin Vettori, he looks gassed, but he also doesn't at the same time. Very weird cardio. And fighting well while you're tired is extremely important against somebody like Sean Strickland, because if you combine those two things, plus Paulo Costa's ability to go up high with the kicks, spinning technique, fan service, just having more presence, more aura, if you will, in there, then there's a decent chance that he ends up getting the nod in these rounds. So I really like Paulo Costa to win the fight this week, and I think that stacking them in the co-main event spot is going to help you quite a bit, especially in tournaments. I think that's the single entry strategy this week, to spill the beans.
I'm serious about this stuff.
And that'll do it for the value plays. Those are all my value plays. I'm not going to go down there, make a case for Dustin Poirier. I'm not doing it. And everybody else, I don't think so. I don't really like anybody else on the card. I think that there are going to be very few underdogs that win this week. So those are the value plays. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win. And if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers. And maybe at 10,000 subscribers, Oscar will start sending out some merch. But anyway, let us build a lineup. This will be for your cash game. So your 50-50s, head-to-heads, double-ups. We always start with a cash game lineup, so I'm going to build one for you now. So ideally, when we're building our cash game lineups, we're looking for a stackable fight so we can get a guaranteed winner and hopefully get provided a nice scoring floor. We just talked about this. We beat that dead horse. So we've got 8450 left over per fighter because we stacked the co-main event. And now we just need to fill this in with pieces that make sense. So what I'm going to do is probably come down here and grab somebody who's extremely cheap, somebody who can score us a decent amount of points, somebody who probably goes the distance, I'm going to come here to Niko Price. I don't want to go too cheap with the punt play this week because I think there's a chance Poirier gets submitted pretty quickly. I think there's a chance that Joselyne just gets his back ridden the entire fight. Gall is live to lose in the first round. Same with Romanov. Michal Oleksieczjuk is interesting, so if you want to plug him in there, cool. But Niko Price fighting somebody like Alex Morono probably goes the distance, and that leaves us with 88.33 left over per fighter. So I'm probably going to come here to grab somebody like Lima. I like Perez this week, not only for your cash games, but for your tournaments as well. Sneaky play. And then you can grab Jailton Almeida. Cool with this. That's the cash game lineup. Bada bing. And now we'll get into building some tournament lineups. But before we do, you can always visit KunithMMA.com if you are looking to get an edge on the competition. If you want your official betting article for the week, it's on there. DFS Strategy Guide for the week, it's on there. The prop of the week, if you want to put your email in there, that's completely free. If you're watching this now, the prop of the week has already been sent out. So if you missed the boat this week, that's okay. You can still put your email in there and get it next time. And I encourage you, if you're in a state that allows it, to do some betting alongside your DFS, because DFS can be very boom or bust sometimes. The betting could be a bit more steady, and we've been crushing it. 4 out of the last 5 events have been profitable. Go check it out on KunithMMA.com. Now back to the breakdown. Now we'll build a couple of lineups for your tournaments. For your tournament plays, I'll say this. At 9,000 and below, you cannot go wrong this week. Obviously, some of them are going to score better than others, and what I'll do for you is just quickly rank them in order from my favorite to my least favorite in this range. My favorite play above 9,000 this week is Jailton Almeida. Just look at what the man has done. 135, 104, 125, 121, 114, 118. If you take away this loss last time out, and this is a 55-point losing performance in a fight that barely went beyond the first round. That's how high this guy's ceiling is. He's just been crushing it. One of the must-play fighters in all of DFS. Jailton Almeida's got to be your number one in this range, closely followed by Islam Makhachev. Both these guys are going to be pretty chalky. They're both going to be pretty highly owned. If you can fit them in your lineups comfortably, both of them, I would recommend that you do it. That's what we call good chalk in the biz. Next would be Grant Dawson. Of course, he's got over 100-point scoring ceiling capabilities. He's going to be able to get Joselecki's back at will in this fight. He'll take him down at will. If he wants to keep it standing, he probably knocks him out and does it early. So you gotta love Grant Dawson at 9,300. Basil Haffez, not only because Basil Haffez is very good on the ground and is good at getting the fight to the ground, but also matchup. And then Kevin Holland, who can go out there and score you a decent amount of points if he gets an early knockout or if he decides to grapple, which I'm assuming he will this week. Just because he's down here does not mean that he doesn't have the same ceiling as some of these guys. I don't think that he'll score more than Almeida. I don't think he'll score more than Makhachev, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of these 3 guys were a bit interchangeable in terms of their price. And depending on the contest you're in, I think that Kevin Holland will probably be the lowest owned of this group, maybe Basil Haffez, but these 3 are going to be pretty chalky up here. So now let's build a lineup using those 2 expensive pieces on top. I'm pretty sure they're both going to be pillars this week. You're going to have them in your lineup. If you play single entry contests, I think it could be a bit sneaky to go with that co-main event stack that we mentioned before. This is also you hoping that not a lot of underdogs win this week. You're going to want as few underdogs as possible to win. That leaves you with 7,600 left over per fighter. Now we are starved. We can't get any of our value plays that we mentioned before. And if we do, we're going to be stuck playing somebody that we really don't like. So let's try that. Let's see what it looks like. Let's say we went with Rowe. That leaves us with 7,300. We have to come down here. If I'm stuck here, I probably go with Niko Price because he's a madman. You never know what's going to happen. And like we always talk about on the channel, it's not always about playing the people you think are going to win. It's about playing the pieces that not only fit into your lineup, but can give you that high scoring ceiling. And your lineup needs to be able to tell a story. Niko Price has a very high finishing rate. He could go out there and finish Alex Morono. Rowe, somebody who finishes a lot of fights. He can go out there, knock out Jake Matthews in the first or second round. You've got the guaranteed winner winner here with Sean Strickland and Costa, and you're also getting a guaranteed about 70 points from the loser. And we've already talked about getting over 100 DraftKings points from our two pieces up top here. So I like this lineup. If you want to run this lineup, cool. If you want to tweak it just a little bit, one pivot that you could make, and I would make if I were in this situation, is I'd probably come off Strickland and I'd play Ailin Perez. You're looking at women's MMA, already under-owned, undervalued, and she scores well in these fights that she's winning. Almost 140 DraftKings points against Ashley Evans-Smith. 88 points last time out against Lucy Pudilova. I remember once upon a time we were talking about Joselyne Edwards and the points that her opponents score when they beat her. The scores are ridiculous. Outside of that fight with Nora Coronel, where she wasn't able to get her down, you look at that fight with Jessica Rose Clark, with Carol Hoza. She's getting taken down, getting controlled for a whole lot of it. So I think Ailin Perez can come out here, score north of 100 DraftKings points, and be less than 20% owned in most of your contests. Let's blow that up and give you another look. Let's say you wanted to come up here and get a little funky with Basil Haffez. Still want to put Jailton Almeida in there. This is a free square. I'll just tell you that now. Jailton Almeida is a button you need to click this week. Every lineup we built in this video will have Jailton Almeida in it just because matchup and what he can do. Now, if you wanted to go a bit unorthodox, you can come up to somebody like Alex Morono. You can grab Andre Lima. Now you're really going against the grain, but you're going to be forced to play somebody who is super cheap. So this will be the Poirier look for you. I don't like Dustin Poirier. I'm not rostering Dustin Poirier. I like him as a fighter. I'll root for Dustin Poirier in most fights, but I don't think that he's going to win this week. If I were stuck in this position with 7,500 left over, I'm probably coming right here to Paulo Costa, the last of our value plays that are available on the board. You left 100 salary on the table, but you got different. Lima's not going to be all that popular. Morono's certainly not going to be all that popular. Dustin Poirier is going to be good leverage. Although he's going to be popular, he's going to be very good leverage off of a guy in Islam Makhachev who should come in north of 50% owned. And then obviously Paulo Costa, 5 rounds to work. Let's blow that up, come down here and grab some of our value plays. Let's say we went with Elizeu, Zaleski, Dos Santos. We came up here to fill Rowe. Roman Kopylov, always interesting because of that finishing ability. You see 101 there, 93, 108, 80. A lot to like about Roman Kopylov, and he does have the grappling to lean on in this fight if he wants to use it. 8,700 left over per fighter. We can come right here to somebody like Lima, so we're not overextending ourselves. We got Perez, 8,900 left over. At this point, you might even want to come down here and grab somebody like Paulo Costa, but wait, we're breaking some rules, aren't we? What rule are we breaking here? Not having Jailton Almeida in the lineup. If this were Catholic school, and none would be slapping up my hands that are used to click the mouse right now because I didn't put Jailton Almeida in there. Zaleski, Dos Santos, Phil Rowe, Kopylov, Almeida, Perez, Costa, cool. Let's blow that up. Let's say I give you another look. Let's say you went with Makhachev, you went with Almeida, and you came down here and you just tried to get all the value plays. All the value plays. What does that leave us with? 8,400 left over. If I'm in this position, I might go Cesar Almeida, or I'll just go the other way with Roman Kopylov, or if I have the option, I will run both of those lineups. I know it's a pay-per-view card, 5-round co-main event, lightweight title on the line, Dustin Poirier in the building, Islam Makhachev in the building. It's a big event, it's big time, but it looks pretty favorite heavy. So I don't have too much for you this week because to me, it feels pretty straightforward. There are a small group of guys that I think can win. There are a small group of guys that absolutely will win. If you're playing single entry, it's all about taking the risks and playing those guys who you might be a little bit iffy about. And if you're running multiple lineups, just do your best to lean on the tools like the DFS lineup optimizer that you can get on kunithmma.com. Lean on the tools to spread out that exposure so you have a better chance of building lineups without duplicates, building lineups that are unique, building lineups that account for randomness, things like that. And I'm not going to drag it out. I'm not one of these channels that's going to have you sitting here watching for an hour and a half. You know, I keep it tight because I got respect for you. And if you follow me on Twitter, you will see my Underdog fantasy slip of the week, the can't miss slip. I can't remember the last time I missed an Underdog fantasy entry. And if you say, well, Kunith, you missed a couple weeks ago, I don't remember. So follow me on Twitter. I think that's where the Underdog fantasy stuff is going to live. They'll match your first deposit. Now they're doing things with $250. The bonus just keeps getting bigger. I don't even know what it is anymore. My recommendation is if you don't have an account with them, just make a small first time deposit. They're going to give you the maximum amount of money that they can, and then play with the house money, because why not? And if you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I wish you the best of luck at UFC 302.